Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. Zhou glanced at Mo Bian briefly before he looked away. Then, he rose to his feet and walked out of the hall with his hands on his back as he said, "Nie Qingyun." Nie Qingyun started slightly, he felt uneasy. Do I have to do it myself? Zhou asked. Nie Qingyun was speechless. This Senior Lu is hell-bent on sealing our fates together. If Cloud Mountain were to harm the people of the Sky Martial Court, they would thoroughly offend the Sky Martial Court and the Royal Court to the point of no return. Mo Bian hurried after Zhou out of the hall. He moved to stand in front of Zhou before he said, "Senior Lu. Just tell me what you want. Why do you have to kill?" Zhou looked at Mo Bian. After a moment of silence, he asked, "How's your cultivation base?" Mo Bian replied, "I'm not a talented cultivator. I'm at the middle to the late phase of the 9-leaf stage." Zhou shook his head and said, "Even Sikong Beichen and Nie Qingyun daren't speak to me like this. You're just a mere 9-leaf cultivator. How presumptuous." As he spoke, he slowly raised his hand that was glowing blue. The power of past lives. He channeled about 1/5 of his extraordinary power into this attack before he pushed it toward Mo Bian. Mo Bian frowned as he raised his palms in an attempt to block the attack. Alas, his protective energy was easily destroyed. Bam! Mo Bian was sent flying back as soon as Zhou's palm seal landed on him. This much was expected. He flew out of the hall into the plaza. He crashed onto the ground and slid about 10 meters back before he finally came to a stop. Sikong Beichen and Nie Qingyun were rendered speechless, and their hearts raced wildly. They were aware they could not effortlessly defeat a late 9-stage elite like Zhou just did. Moreover, Mo Bian was talented and experienced. He was unlike young cultivators who had just reached the 9-leaf stage. He was widely acknowledged as a genius cultivator and had great potential to reach the 10-leaf stage. Yet, before Zhou, he was completely defenseless. Elder Mo. More than 10 Sky Martial Court disciples who followed Mo Bian here immediately ran toward him to help him up. Mo Bian rose to his feet with great difficulty. Finally, when the pain from the strike was too much for him to bear, he grunted before blood trickled out from the corner of his lips. The drop of blood dripped onto the ground, staining it red. Mo Bian's arms felt numb and his fingers could not stop trembling. Even his legs felt weak. If it were not for his disciples' support, he would have fallen back to the ground. In a fight between elites, all it took was a move to discern the opponent's strength. With just one exchange, the difference between the strength would be clear. Mo Bian took a long time to recover from the impact. This palm strike made him understand what standing on equal ground meant. An elder was only an elder, and a 9-leaf cultivator was only a 9-leaf cultivator. He did not have the right to act so impudently in front of a 10-leaf cultivator. After a while, Mo Bian finally moved his hand slightly, gesturing to the disciples at his side to move back. He calmed himself down as he tidied his clothes before he cupped his fists together at Zhou and said, "I'll be sure to convey your message to the courtmaster." Zhou did not reply. Mo Bian looked to the sides and said, "Gather our things. We're leaving." At this moment, Zhenghai said, "Leave your things here." Mo Bian's eyelid twitched. He was about to object before he decided to swallow the words at the tip of his tongue. Instead, he said, "These are meeting gifts to begin with. I'm more than happy to give them to Senior Lu if he's willing to accept them. Let's go." When the people from the Sky Martial Court were boarding the flying chariot, little Yuan brought Conk to the entrance of the hall before she pointed at the flying chariot and said, "See that? You must use force to put people in their place. If you meet people like him in the future, just hit them with all your might. Many will tell you that violence is not the solution, but as your senior sister, let me tell you that violence and force is the most effective method to solve problems." I'll remember your words, 9th senior sister. Conk nodded. The others were speechless. Zhou frowned as he looked at the two girls. One was bold enough to teach, and the other was bold enough to learn. Should I separate them? Meanwhile, Meng Changdong was going through the contents of the boxes. After a while, he said, Senior Lu, these are extremely high-quality talismans. They're already inscribed with runes so they can be used as is. Lu Zhou nodded and said, they're good items, but we must figure out a way to communicate with the other side. Meng Changdong said, based on what we saw last time, I'm convinced the people from the Sky Martial Court placed the formation on the Sky Chariot. The Sky Chariot was high, so I don't think it was destroyed. If the formation veins are still intact, we'll be able to see them. However, if they don't have talismans, they might not be able to see us. Zhenghai said, what are you waiting for? Let's give it a try. Meng Changdong nodded and took out the talismans from the boxes. These high-quality talismans were much more superior compared to ordinary talismans. As Meng Changdong drew the formation, he said, in the Sky Martial Court, they would usually prepare formation flags and canvases beforehand. That way, they can save a lot of time. They can just spread the formation canvas on the floor and activate it. There's no need to inscribe anything. Zhenghai nodded before he said to Lu Zhou, Master, your foresight amazes me. You're right to recruit this guardian. After the formation was completed, Meng Changdong brought the talismans out before he lit them up. One high-quality talisman would release dozens of rune seals after it was burned. All Meng Changdong needed to do was to burn more than 10 talismans to activate the formation. Soon enough, the rune seals formed images in the air that broadcasted what was happening back in the Golden Lotus domain. A group of people with curious expressions on their faces could be seen in the images. Seventh junior brother, is this the junk that crossed the endless ocean? Fourth senior brother, this isn't a piece of junk. I've studied it for 3 days. If the people from the Red Lotus domain created this, they definitely didn't do it alone. Didn't you develop the water shuttle? The speed and capacity of the water shuttle is a far cry from that of the sky shuttle. At this moment, Zhu Honggong walked closer to Ming Shirin and Si Wuya. He said with a bored expression on his face, is the Red Lotus domain so powerful? Currently, we don't know much about the Red Lotus domain. However, I have a feeling they're much more powerful than us, Si Wuya said. We're doomed, then. Master and our junior sisters went over there without much thought. I'm sure they've been beaten up until their heads swelled like pig heads, Zhu Honggong said. At this moment, little Yuan pointed at Zhu Honggong and cried out, Master, 8th senior brother is bad-mouthing you again. Lu Zhou was expressionless as always. That rascal. 3 days without a beating, and a child would scale the roof to rip the tiles, 2 days without a whipping, and the skin and flesh would turn sour. Meng Changdong added another talisman to maintain the broadcast. At this moment, a 150-foot avatar appeared in the distance. The golden avatar towered proudly above its surroundings as the coiling dragon staff circled it and shone with dazzling brilliance. The others merely glanced at it once before turning their attention back to the sky chariot as though they had seen nothing. Yao Qingchuan was dumbstruck. How can they treat a 9-leaf avatar as though it's nothing? Miss Ninth, that is. Who are they? Yao Qingchuan asked humbly. That's the evil sky pavilion. That fat, big-eared one is my 8th senior brother. The one who looks like a villain and is stroking his chin is my 4th senior brother. That's my 7th senior brother. The avatar belongs to Elder Zhou. Judging by their reactions, I think Elder Zhou must have reached the 9-leaf stage for quite some time now, and they've gotten sick of looking at her avatar, little Yuan explained. The others had to admit that little Yuan's words made sense. Indeed, no one paid attention to Zui Yushu's 9-leaf avatar. At this moment, Si Wuya suddenly turned and said, the formation veins are glowing. Bring me some talismans. Meng Changdong was shocked. He added another talisman as he said, he knows what the formation is used for. That's my 7th senior brother. You might think I'm bragging, but even if everyone in the Sky Martial Court and the Flying Star House put their heads together, they still won't be as smart as my 7th senior brother, little Yuan said with her hands on her hips. Someone coughed awkwardly. That's too much, little girl. Zhou said, this disciple of mine loves to solve difficult riddles. He's similar to the Sky Martial Court's Luo Xian. Meng Changdong took Zhou's words in stride and said, I didn't expect there to be such a talent in the Evil Sky Pavilion. I'm impressed. See Wuya burned the talismans. The rune seals descended on the formation on the sky chariot before images began to appear in the air. Ming Shirin, Si Wuya, Zhu Honggong, Zhou Jifeng, Pan Zhong, and several female cultivators gathered around. Master? Ming Shirin exclaimed in shock. Si Wuya was overjoyed. It's just as I suspected. This is a means to communicate. Greetings, Master. Ming Shirin fell to his knees. Greetings, Master. The others followed suit and greeted Zhou as well. Greetings, Pavilion Master. The elders, Duanmu Sheng and Yi Tianxin were not present. Zhu Honggong was the only one left standing, clearly dumbstruck. When he regained his senses, he hurriedly fell to his knees and prostrated himself on the ground. Master, have mercy. Stand up and speak, Zhou said. The members of the Evil Sky Pavilion rose to their feet. When Zhu Honggong rose to his feet, Zhou frowned slightly. Did I allow you to stand? Zhu Honggong shuddered and hastily said, I'm just adjusting my position. Here. You can see better if I move here. Can you see how sincere I am? As he spoke, he began to prostrate himself on the ground again. Zhenghai covered his eyes. They had been building up a glorious image in the Red Lotus domain for such a long time. To the people of the Red Lotus domain, the Evil Sky Pavilion was a lofty force not to be taken lightly. All of them were worthy of being worshipped by others. With Old Eight's antics, he had completely destroyed that lofty image. Nevertheless, Yao Qingchuan was shocked. The Evil Sky Pavilion disciples, all elites in their own right, were so respectful and reverent toward Zhou. It was apparent that Zhou had a high status and prestige. What's the situation in the Evil Sky Pavilion? Zhou asked. Si Wuya knew that talismans were rare and that time was short. He quickly said, the 9 provinces are stable. With Cheng Huang's protection, 6th senior sister is unrivaled. The beasts and the other tribes are not a threat to us. Is Zhuyu a 9-leaf cultivator now? Zhou intentionally asked about one person to prevent the others from gaining too much information about the Evil Sky Pavilion. Elder Zhou has already reached the 9-leaf stage a long time ago. Currently, she's still familiarizing herself with her leaf power. Si Wuya had seen the unfamiliar faces around his master, so he did not speak unnecessarily and only answered his master's question. Forces from the Red Lotus domain will be invading soon. Be careful, Zhou said. Don't worry, Master. I'll look after the Evil Sky Pavilion, nothing will happen to us, Si Wuya said with a confident smile. Zhou nodded. He felt at ease. The previous broadcast was cut short so they did not know the result of the battle. However, it seemed like the force the Red Lotus domain sent previously had been completely defeated. No wonder Mo Bian was willing to back down. At this moment, Si Wuya said, Master, I'll be sending some information over through this talisman formation later. Upon hearing this, Meng Changdong could not help but ask in surprise, you know how to send information over? Of course. It's rather easy after all. Just write the message down on a talisman or a canvas and burn it inside the formation, Si Wuya replied. That's a secret only known by the Sky Martial Court and the Flying Star House. You. To think you know that as well. That's incredible, just incredible. Meng Changdong said, still shocked. Who are you, sir? Si Wuya asked. Zhou said sternly, watch your manners. He's a new 9-leaf cultivator of the Evil Sky Pavilion. He's Guardian Meng, the first guardian of the pavilion. When the members of the Evil Sky Pavilion heard this, they did not dare to act recklessly. All of them bowed in unison. Greetings, Guardian Meng. Meng Changdong was moved when the Evil Sky Pavilion's members greeted him. Although he had been an elder in the Flying Star House, only he knew the wretched treatment he had received there. even Yizhen's disciple could order him around. Now that he joined the Evil Sky Pavilion, he finally gained the respect and status he deserved. How could he not feel moved? After a brief moment, Mang Changdong inhaled deeply before he cupped his fists together and said, "Nice to meet you." Meanwhile, Lu Zhou was lost in his thoughts. Indeed, there were many things that were not convenient to be spoken out loud in front of so many people. After a beat, he said, "Guardian Meng, I'll make the preparations later. You'll exchange information with Si Wuya." Understood, Mang Changdong said. Si Wuya bowed and said, "Yes, master." At this moment, the broadcast was cut off. Lu Zhou turned to look at the boxes in the hall. Then, he turned around and left without saying anything. Sikong Baichen wanted to say something, but he was too shy to speak out. He sighed before he said emotionally, "Nia Qingyun, you don't have the bearing of a sect master. Look at Brother Lu. That's how a sect master should behave and conduct himself." Nia Qingyun said contemptuously, "I can say the same about you." At this moment, Zhenghai said to Nia Qingyun, "Sect master Nia, shall we spar?" "I would love to." With this, the duo made their way to the cloud platform. Lu Zhou was not as carefree as the others. After he returned to his room, he wrote down his instructions to Si Wuya on the talismans. Mang Changdong took the talismans and exchanged messages with Si Wuya before he presented Lu Zhou with the information he received from Si Wuya. Lu Zhou was not worried that Mang Changdong would leak the information. He would not employ someone he did not trust and would not doubt someone he employed. After reading Si Wuya's information, Lu Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Apart from Ming Shiyin, Nan Gongwei and Zhuyu are now 9-leaf cultivators. Yi Tianqin is also a 9-leaf cultivator, and she has mastered the karmic fire. Apart from that, she also has Cheng Huang. Duanmu Shang has been cultivating diligently and has reached the 8-leaf stage. Lang Luo and Pan Lydian are attempting the 9-leaf stage. There are 2 9-leaf cultivators in the divine capital. Zhao Yu's cultivation progress is slower since she's busy with governing the land. Zhu Honggong is now a 6-leaf cultivator. Zhou Jifeng and Pan Zhong are now 4-leaf cultivators. Hua Yuexing is now an 8-leaf cultivator. The collective strength of the Evil Sky Pavilion was now at an unimaginable level. However, Lu Zhou was rather puzzled. Why did Si Wuya not report his own cultivation base? He stroked his beard as he wondered out loud, "Is he worried that I'd reprimand him?" After reading the message, Lu Zhou burned it. Next, it was time for him to deal with the Red Lotus domain. The Sky Martial Court, the Palace, Luo Xian. Lu Zhou muttered to himself, also, what's a birth chart? There were many questions that he needed answers to. Over the next 2 days, Lu Zhou cultivated in his room. On the 3rd day, little Yuan came to the room door and bowed as she said, "Master, eldest senior brother and Nia Qingyun are still at it." Lu Zhou opened his eyes. He gauged his primal qi. His cultivation base was already in the late phase. If he could cultivate a little longer, he could sprout the 10th leaf. "I see." Lu Zhou stood up and left the room. He appeared on the peak with little Yuan and looked at the cloud platform. The cloud platform was spacious so he could clearly see Zhenghai and Nia Qingyun fighting with all their might. Energy sabers danced in the air. The red and golden flashes were dizzying to watch. At this moment, Sikong Baichen saw Lu Zhou. He unleashed his grand technique and arrived before Lu Zhou. He cupped his fists together and said with a smile on his face, "Brother Lu, your first disciple is amazing." "How so?" Lu Zhou asked. "This has gone on for 3 days, and more than 10 rounds. Zhenghai's performance is remarkable. Although Nia Qingyun suppressed his cultivation base to make the fight fair, he's still a 10-leaf cultivator, after all. Even if it's very slight, he still has the upper hand. However, Zhenghai is honorable even in defeat throughout the 10 battles." At this moment, Zhenghai unleashed the sovereign descent. A waterfall of energy sabers fell from the sky. The Cloud Mountain disciples were in awe no matter how many times they had seen this. He lost all 10 fights. Lu Zhou frowned. I'm ashamed of him. Sikon Baichen was speechless. After a beat, he cleared his throat and said, he's a 9-leaf cultivator fighting a 10-leaf cultivator. Brother Liu, aren't you asking too much of him? This is how I've always been with my disciples. Moreover, Nie Qingyun didn't spar with him using his 10-leaf power. It was more difficult than reaching the heavens for a 9-leaf cultivator to defeat a 10-leaf cultivator. A strict teacher will produce fine students. I'm enlightened. Sikon Baichen turned around and looked at the energy sabers in the skies. The technique, sovereign descent, was a truly amazing sight. Nie Qingyun looked at the incoming attacks intently. His saber moves were neat, and he always parried the energy sabers without any unnecessary moves. His moves were simple and effective. At this moment, he tossed out an energy saber that spun around him, keeping the onslaught of energy sabers from Zhenghai at bay. Then, he said, Brother Yu, shall we stop here? Zhenghai gripped the jasper saber and said, you fell for my trick. The energy sabers from the sovereign descent were in the midst of descending when Zhenghai suddenly unleashed a huge energy saber that was several feet long. He brought the energy saber down with a crushing momentum. The energy saber vibrated. Nie Qingyun was certain he could easily dodge this attack. However, after a moment, he was shocked when he discovered the energy sabers from the sovereign descent had cut off his escape routes. In the end, he was left with no choice but to parry the blow with his own energy saber. Boom! Zhenghai's energy saber fell. Nie Qingyun looked up. He discovered there were 2 more energy sabers after the first one fell. Nice move. Zhenghai brought his jasper saber down. His aura, power, and techniques were at an all-time high at this moment.